Hey guys, tonight we step back to the very first light breaking over a clay-walled shrine, where a lone figure squints into the horizon as if reading tomorrow's headlines in the sunrise. You feel the chill of pre-dawn air nudging your spine, the faint scent of burning reeds tickling your nose, and the world holds its breath. And you probably won't survive this mental time travel without blinking, so brace yourself. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. I'd love to know where you're tuning in from, so drop your location and local time in the comments. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. You trudge across sun-baked plains, alongside the earliest priests, robed in undyed wool that brushes your ankles like a sleepy cat. They've risen before dawn around 3000 BCE in Mesopotamia. Temple keepers began charting the skies with surprising regularity. Mainstream fact you've probably seen in every ancient astronomy documentary. Each morn, those priests stood atop mud brick ziggurats, chanting soft incantations as the first sliver of sun split the horizon. The flames from their reed torches collapse into embers behind them, and dew glittered on the stones like shattered starlight. You can almost taste the powdered ochre smeared across ritual bowls, earthy, metallic, a little bitter mixed with the temps of goat's milk left out to sour. Historians still argue whether these early observations were purely spiritual rites or the first stirrings of empirical study, as scribes recorded star positions alongside prayers. Imagine them hunching over clay tablets by torchlight, stylus in hand, pressing wedge-shaped marks into damp clay. Our ancestors' version of Instagram stories. Except nobody's going to like those. They aligned their altars to the cardinal points by watching the sunrise and sunset over a fixed stone marker, an everyday miracle. You might chuckle at that today, scrolling through weather apps, but their entire worldview pivoted on those observations. A quirky fringe tale even claims some priests smeared fish oil on their eyelids to cut glare while peering skyward, probably. More grease than wisdom. But it makes for a good story. Your senses sharpen, the wind rattles loose reeds, and that distant bleat of a goat sounds like a cosmic cue. The lead priest raises his hand, palm open, to catch the dawn's first glow. He whispers numbers that echo off the walls, 360 degrees in a circle. 12 lunar months, 60-minute hours, sacred numbers that later govern temple layouts. You notice the precision, corners aligned within fractions of a degree, stones hewn so straight they'd shame your level tool. You drift with their breath, counting pulses as the sky lightens. The horizon morphs from ink black to bruised purple to gold. Each hue whispers secret seasons ahead, floods or famine, prosperity or plague. The priest mutters a prophecy about the coming harvest. You smirk, remembering your last attempt at weather forecasting ended in soggy laundry. Smoke from the incense coils drifts upward, twisting around the priest's headdress of woven reeds. Historians still argue whether that smoke was meant to connect with gods or simply mask the smell of livestock. You lean in, inhale cedar and frankincense, and imagine that swirl of atoms carrying prayers into the void. As the sun clears the horizon, you sense the shift. Time has begun anew. The priest's tally of days reset, and the world, your world, feels both infinite and fragile. You scratch at an ankle as a breeze teases your robe, and for a moment you're not sure if you're still ancient or back in your room with a smartphone buzzing in your pocket. You realize those first priests were doing more than ceremony. They were mapping the cosmos, bit by bit, stone by stone. You slip from the damp shadow of the ziggurat into a mist-veiled stand of ancient stones, each monolith rising like a silent chorus of watchful giants. The ground squelches beneath your sandals, sucking at your footsteps with a cold peat scent. That clings to your skin. Straight ahead, a massive slab weathered to chalky gray faces the horizon. It's set precisely so that on the winter solstice, sunrise's first golden spear pierces the narrow gap between that stone and its partner across the circle. Builders began shifting those stones into place around 2500 BCE, and today, you still feel that shiver of anticipation when the light catches. Just read a mainstream fact that archaeologists love to tout. You crouch low, brushing damp moss from the base of the Stonehenge trilithon. In moments, the sun will edge above the horizon, dredging fire across the cold stones. Historians still argue whether this alignment was a timekeeper for agricultural festivals or a sacred gesture directed at Pe, deities of rebirth. You taste peat, smoke on the breeze, and wonder if those Bronze Age priests may be smeared with fish oil on their eyelids to cut glare. Remember? Felt the same frisson of ritual satisfaction you do now. The circle thrums with latent energy. You press your palm against a standing stone, its surface pitted with lichen that tickles your fingers. A quarried block this size weighs tens of tons. Yet some theorists suggest prehistoric engineers used water-lubricated logs to slide them across miles of marshland. A fringe tale even claims gloved druids harnessed acoustical resonance, saying that if you chant just so, the stones hum back in harmonic sympathy. You try it, softly repeating a low tone. But all you get is your own echo mingling with a passing skylark's trill. Distant hoofbeats drum like a heartbeat. And you spot a group of newcomers arriving just as the sky brightens. They stand in a rough arc northeast of the main circle, where a small altar slab tilts toward the heavens. This is the celestial altar, custom-built, so that at the summer solstice sunset, a fading light sweeps the polished face in a blaze of coppery glow, impressively precise for a people wielding only antler picks and stone hammers. You trace the sun's arc in your mind. An invisible curve from solstice sunrise at one marker to sunset at the altar slab. Fragrant smoke curls from a shallow pit behind the altar, swirling around carved chalices filled with frankincense and cedar shavings. That resinous scent pulls you in as if the smoke itself carries secrets whispered by the cosmos. You inhale deep and feel a peculiar tingling across your cheeks, like a distant electric hum. Some romantics claim those incense plumes acted as conduit spirits rode the smoke rings straight to the sky. Scholars still argue whether the smoke functioned as an olfactory trigger for ecstasy or simply masked the odor of nearby livestock, penned for sacrifice. You nudge a friend beside you, only it's the same uneasy mix of reverence and skepticism that's been with you since dawn. A blinked-out smartphone rests in your pocket, silently judging this low-tech wonder. You slip your hand inside and press the camera shutter. Subtle silhouettes of the trilithons emerge in your screen's glow. But you switch it off quickly, needing your full senses. There's sacred choreography here, at precise moments. Priests in woven wool tunics step from behind the altar, arms raised, faces turned east. They carry wooden staffs topped with carved spiral motif symbols of cyclical time, as the sun's disk clears the horizon fully. The group murmurs a low chant in unison. It ripples through the clearing, pressing against your chest like a gentle wave. On this day, seasonal tides shift, the days will lengthen, crops flourish, and the taboo bound between earth and sky loosens for a time. You feel goosebumps as sunlight slashes across the altar's face, setting it ablaze with molten light. The stones seem to glow from within, as though caught by starlight rebounding from some hidden inner chamber. You stretch your neck, spying a small notch carved high on the northeastern trilithon. It's polished to glassy smoothness, worn by centuries of sunlit rituals. A quirky footnote in fringe literature speculates that priests used a water-filled basin at that notch to refract sunlight into coded patterns on the crowned protolizers for sacred messaging. Unlikely, but you can't help smirking at the image of Bronze Age laser light shows behind you. Someone coughs, jolting the momentary trance. A breeze stirs the incense, sending a drift of cedar dust across your throat. You taste something primal, whiff of ancient ceremony, the promise of life renewed. The assembly disperses, leaving the circle empty except for you and the stones. You lean back, propping yourself against a smaller megalith, and close your eyes. The last rays of dawn stretch across the sky, pastel ribbons dissolving into blue dot. In this hush between light and full day, you're keenly aware that these alignments weren't accidental. Generations of priests and laborers measured, cut, moved, and polished each stone by hand, all to chase sunlight. Whether they grasped the physics at play or simply worshipped its mystery, we may never know. Historians still argue whether their obsessions were proto-science or theology cloaked in geometry. But right now, with the wind sighing through the standing stones, you sense both truth and wonder are alive in those silent giants. You push to your feet, brushing grass seeds from your robes, and step away from the circle. As you walk, the stones stand guard behind you, sentinel after sentinel, inscribed by light and time. The world yawns awake, sheep bleating in nearby fields, and you carry the echo of their dawn chorus with you. Ahead, fields laid out in neat lines suggest tomorrow's harvest, another testament to the calendar carved into stone. You remember those ziggurat priests counting hours by wedges on clay? Can realize that across continents and millennia, the human impulse is the same too. Capture the sky's secrets in shapes we can touch. You follow a winding path from the megaliths to a low-lying hill crowned by a rectangular silhouette. An ancient temple rising from the earth like some monumental sundial. The air here is thick with incense and age. You tuck a loose curl behind your ear as you step onto the weathered threshold stone, its surface pitted with centuries of sandal scuffs. Columns flank you, hewn from limestone so pale they glow in the half-light, and each bears carved bands of numbers, symbols, and mythic creatures. You breathe in the scent of resin and warm stone, your footsteps echoing in the pillared hall, as if the building itself hums with hidden harmonies. Inside, you notice the ratio that frames every chamber. The width is exactly twice the height, and the nave's length equals 15 times one of its pilasters. Archaeologists tell us that by around 1400 BCE, Egyptian temples adhered strictly to these proportions to mirror the balance of the heavens. Mainstream fact you might have caught in a museum documentary. Here, every dimension vibrates with meaning 2 for duality, 15 for the 15-day lunar phases, and the doubled height representing the sky meeting the earth. The priests who laid these stones believed they'd encoded cosmic rhythm into the very fabric of the building. As you press your palm against a smooth column, you feel a network of faint grooves running invisible lines through the stone. You trace them with your fingertips, thinking of proto-Excel spreadsheets scratched into rock. Historians still argue whether these numeric grids were blueprints for ritual, choreographic processions timed to celestial events, or merely mnemonic devices for memorizing prayers. You draw in a slow breath and whisper, "Easy, guys, let me see the spreadsheet." You wander deeper into the sanctuary, noticing the floor is divided into 52 equal tiles, maybe a nod to the 52-year cycle that ancient Mesopotamian priests tracked to synchronize lunar and solar years. That cycle governed their New Year festivals. They believed these tiles represented the years between cosmic resets. You take a step, and the tile beneath you shifts by a fraction, just a hair's breadth. Thanks to a clever spring mechanism survivors added in Byzantine times. You smile at this fringe bit of engineering trivia. Someone long after the priests thought the temple needed a bit more theatrics. A gentle quiver underfoot to remind worshippers the gods were still stirring. A shaft of sunlight filters through. A narrow, clear-story window crossing the tiled floor in a golden line. It lands on a tile numbered 7, the number of planets visible to the naked eye in antiquity. You crouch, shading your eyes, and marvel at each hour. That beam moves exactly 1 tile's width, so the priests could mark time by tracking its path like a proto-sundial under glass. You taste a hint of dust and frankincense as the beam moves on, and you remember that fish oil eye grease from earlier. You probably still have a bit smudged near your brow. Doesn't matter. Here, everything celebrates the sacred numerology. You rise and move toward the inner sanctum. The doorway is framed by 2 massive pillars, carved with serpentine lines, 1 coils on one, 19 on the other, adding to 39. That some intrigued fringe theorists who propose a hidden reference to the 39 books of an old sacred text, though mainstream scholars shrug and note the builders more likely counted scales on a revered snake deity statue. Historians still argue whether that numeric symbolism pointed to esoteric lore or was simply an artistic flourish in service of awe. Inside the sanctum, the ceiling vaults above you in a perfect semicircular arch spanning 9 meters, the number of muses, the number of circles in some mythic underworld, and the curved stones interlock in sets of 7. You lean back to admire the keystone, where a carved solar disk is encircled by 12 smaller rosettes, each rosette precisely spaced at 30-degree intervals. You raise your voice in a half-whisper. You'd need a protractor with 0 margin of error, bronze age mode. A playful sarcasm edges your tone, gentle enough for ASMR sleepiness. Your fingers drift along the altar's edge. Inlaid into its surface are concentric circles, the outer ring divided, into 360 tiny pits, 1 for every degree of the circle. It's a mainstream fact that by the time these temples were at their peak, around 1200 BCE, priests in Mesopotamia and Egypt shared the sexagesimal number system borrowed from Sumerian scribes. They carved those pit marks to map the sky in a format that still underpins our clocks and compasses today. You tap 1 pit and imagine a grain of sand filling it. A cosmic Pomodoro tick, marking another moment past. On either side of the altar stand 2 stone lions. Their bodies divided in 2 segments. 1 lion has 9 segments, the other 6. Someone once told you that 9 represented the celestial spheres and 6 the directions of earthly winds. A quirky bit of myth suggests whispering a secret into the lion's segmented back would carry your message to a god via encoded vibrations. Though you suspect that's as practical as fish oil smeared eyelids in bright sunlight. You step back out of the sanctum, feeling the dust catch under your nails. The side chamber door swings shut behind you with a soft click, as if sealing the sacred algorithms inside. You take another look at the temple's facade. 5 tiers of steps rise to the entrance, echoing the 5 classical elements believed to compose the universe. As you begin your descent, you sense each step served dual purposes: architectural buttressing and cosmic metaphor. Outside, you settle on a low bench carved into the temple's plinth. The late afternoon sun casts long shadows across the courtyard, each shadow 5 cubits long. You reach out to measure just over 2.5 meters by your estimation, recalling that ancient priests had standardized cubit rods to ensure uniform measurements. Historians still argue whether those rods emerged from an imperial decree to streamline temple construction or from a guild of temple masons who traded secret units behind locked doors. You fold your arms, glancing up at the temple's facade one last time. Every angle, every ratio, every carved groove whispers an intention to capture the heavens within mortar and stone. You can almost hear the scribe's styluses tapping on clay tablets at the city's archive, worn hands counting, recounting, perfecting each dimension before a chisel struck the first blow. You realize that you're part of their continuum. You notice patterns, you record them in memory, and you pass them along another link in a chain of human curiosity. A breeze rustles through the courtyard's oleander bushes, carrying a hint of sweet blossoms. You lean your head back, eyes half closed, and let the temple's geometry rule your moment of calm. There's a serenity in numbers, the sense that order underlies chaos, and for a while, you dissolve into that quiet assurance. Outside, civilization hums on, but within these stones, time is measured in degrees, seasons, and sacred integers. You rise at last, brushing sand from your robes, feeling oddly invigorated by temple numerology. The sun dips low, slanting its light so that every ratio you've absorbed glints in your mind's eye. You step down the last tier of 5, weight settling around your shoulders like a comfortable cloak. Ahead, the path beckons toward sunset, as if to remind you that day and night, number and nature remain locked in their eternal dance. You slip through a large doorway into a dimly lit alcove tucked behind the temple's main sanctuary. The air wraps around you with a heady mix of warmed oils, crushed resins, and something metallic like the faintest hint of copper pennies. Lamps set on stone shelves cast dancing shadows across shelves lined with jars of fragrant substances. Priests in linen robes move with deliberate slowness, measuring powders into handcrafted bowls. You can almost feel the hum of their intent vibrating through the stone walls. Your eyes adjust, and you spot alabaster jars labeled in faded hieroglyphs. A mainstream fact floats through your mind. Egyptian temple priests around 1500 BCE perfected kefi, a complex blend of honey, myrrh, juniper berries, and wine used in daily temple rituals to honor raw and soothe spirits. Lean in, inhaling. A breath that's sweet, smoky, and strangely soothing, almost like someone mixed your favorite chai latte with campfire logs. One priest lifts a bronze spoon to stir a thick, amber liquid. When he flicks his wrist, tiny sparkles drift off the mixture's surface. Flecks of mica mined from distant quarries used to catch the candlelight in a star-like shimmer. Historians still argue whether these metallic glitters were aesthetic flourish or symbolic nods to celestial bodies. You squint, watching the glitter swirl, and wonder if they were the Bronze Age version of Instagram filters. On a low table, you see a small vial of black powder so fine it looks like the void itself ground into grains. You reach out. The priest nods and lets you lift it. It's cold and weightless. Flecks of rock that glint like distant galaxies. Fringe philosophers claim this stardust came from meteorites, ground down by alchemists who believed each fragment held cosmic power. You slip a pinch between your fingers and watch it slip through your knuckles like lunar sand. You whisper to the nearby acolyte, "So, this is where cosmic glitter comes from." He smiles, tucking a stray lock of hair behind his ear. You drop a bit of the powder into the bowl of amber oil. That metallic scent sharpens in your nostrils, a pinch of coppery temps among sweeter notes. A small swirl of blue flame flickers when the priest ignites a red incense stick over the bowl, and you feel the heat lick your palm through the ceramic dot. The bowl rattles in the priest's hands as he murmurs an invocation to Thoth, god of wisdom and scribes. You can almost taste the syllables in the smoke: canis, sandalwood, and something earthy you can't quite place. You trace the lamp's light back to a slender shadow dancing on the wall, thinking about those ziggurat priests mapping stars in the dawn. Now, here, Generations later, temple seers are distilling the essence of the cosmos into scented oils. You lean forward to sniff a half-carved flask filled with tinted oil. Its color shifts between deep purple and bronze, depending on the light, reminding you of oil slicks on city streets after a rainstorm. The high priest dips a brush into the flask and draws a tiny spiral on your wrist. You feel a faint tingle, as if the oil is charging your nerves like static on a sweater. Historians still argue whether such anointment was meant to enhance trance states, or was simply a theatrical prelude to ritual drama. You try to wipe the oil off, but it clings to your skin like a memory. You smirk, thinking of that fish oil eye. Grease, you and your ancestors probably smeared on yourselves to cut sun glare back at 0 BCE. Maybe this oil is the nocturnal counterpart catching fireflies of thought in your mind's eye. You rub your wrist to spread the spiral, and veins of mica catch the lamp's glow, glittering as if you're wearing a cosmic tattoo. A whisper ripples through the chamber. The oil will be used in the midnight rite, when the moon is at its zenith. A slender corridor leads you to a circular basin carved from obsidian, set into the floor. Around it are small clay bowls filled with salts mined from dead seas, pulverized gemstones, and more stardust. You crouch, scooping a pinch of pink salt into your palm and feeling the rough crystals bite into your skin. Then you add a sliver of lapis lazuli powder, once worth more than gold to the Egyptians, believing its deep celestial blue resonated with the night sky. The priest pours warmed oil into the basin, and you drop in each mineral in turn. The mixture hisses as it meets a heat source below, releasing tendrils of smoke that curl toward an opening high above in the dome. Light filters down through a small oculus, spotlighting the swirling mist like a celestial projection. You watch, entranced, as the smoke plumes carve ephemeral shapes, serpents, rippling columns before it drifts upward into the dark. A playful sarcasm edges your voice. Your tick-tock essential oil diffuser can't compete with this. The priest chuckles, casting a quick glance at the rising smoke. You can almost see characters forming, maybe a warning of famine or news of victory in a far-off land. Whether these visions were genuine auguries or simply the byproduct of aromatic toxins tweaking their senses, historians still argue whether these rites were medicinal, spiritual, or primitive chemistry demonstrations. Your chest tightens as the scent deepens, a complex bouquet that makes your mind feel both heavy and light, like the weight of all that history pressing down, then ready to lift you up. You breathe slowly, matching your heart to the ritual's rhythm. Though you're a visitor, you feel threads connecting you to those ancients who ground together pine resin and celestial, or to glimpse the beyond. Distant murmur crescendos as the rest of the temple's priests file into the chamber. They stand in a ring around you, their tunics flickering golden in the oil lamp's glow. Someone passes you a small reed brush and motions to an empty bowl. You dip it into the still swirling mixture and draw a glyph on the basin's rim. Eye within a circle, symbolizing cosmic vision. You step back, wobbling slightly as the incense haze coils around your ankles like playful snakes. You taste a hint of dust in the smoke and catch your reflection in the obsidian sheen. It's you, but filtered through millennia of priestly laurier skin, the canvas for oils once offered to gods. A light joke escapes you. If only this oil came in a travel size. A ripple of laughter echoes softly as the rite concludes. The basin's contents sink into a glowing ember hue, and the final wisp of smoke spirals into the oculus. The priests bow, then disperse, leaving you alone among empty jars and spent embers. The alcove feels hollow, the air cooler, but lingering with that sweet metallic perfume. You rub your wrist again. The spiral gleams faintly in the lamplight, a reminder of mysteries distilled into fluid form. You step out of the chamber, blinking into the corridor's brighter glow. The fish oil smear on your temples feels oddly comforting compared to the high-voltage tingle on your wrist. Ahead, the temple's open courtyard hums with light evening activity. Scribes copying tablets by torchlight, acolytes rehearsing chants for tomorrow's ceremonies. You inhale deeply, letting that blended scent linger in your lungs. You realize that for these priests, oils and mineral dusts formed a kind of alchemical language, words spoken to the sky and to the human psyche. They turned ordinary substances into a bridge between earth and cosmos, and in doing so, reminded you how ancient practices can feel both foreign and familiar. You pat your robe, which still smells faintly of cedar and lapis, and step back into the rhythmic pulse of temple life, carrying that sensory echo with you. You climb a narrow spiral staircase carved into the temple's outer wall, each step worn smooth by centuries of bare feet, and push open an iron-bound door into a vaulted chamber filled with muted torchlight. The air here is cooler, redolent of damp stone and pollen drifting down from high windows screened by latticework. Before you stretches a vast stone circle set into the floor, an enormous calendar wheel whose concentric rings are carved with glyphs, numbers, and mythic figures. You feel a slight vertigo, as if time itself is tilting beneath your sandals. The priests call this the heart of the ages. And around 600 CE, Maya astronomers perfected the Tzolk'in and Hab calendars, one 260 days. The other 365's interlocking. Like gears in a cosmic clock, a mainstream fact you've seen in every National Geographic special. Each ring on the stone wheel represents a cycle, the 20-day names of the Tzolk'in. The 18 months of 20 days, plus the 5 unlucky Wayib days of the Hab. You hover at the edge, tracing the carved serpent that marks the calendar round's 52-year cycle. Okay? And realize this room doubles as an oracle. By aligning rings, priests could predict floods, eclipses, okay? And when to plant maize, as your fingers brush a glyph for Keonich. Aha, the sun god, you sense the whisper of myth threaded through each symbol. Historians still argue whether these glyphs served purely practical agricultural needs or if they encoded a sacred narrative of creation, death, and rebirth. You imagine priests chanting as they turned the outer ring, each click echoing like distant thunder in your chest. Their voices rose and fell in a hypnotic cadence, tapping into time's ebb and FL. You lean closer to study the carvings. A quirky footnote from fringe lore suggests that priests lace their ceremonial cacao with mourning glory extracts to induce visions of the calendar's future cycles. You wrinkle your nose at the thought your last attempt at herbal tea nearly gave you a stomach ache, let alone a prophecy. But here, in this cool chamber, it doesn't feel far-fetched. The glyphs dance in torchlight, their mouths open and silent. Oracular speech. Around the wheel, a raised ledge supports 14 tiny jade statuettes, each representing a Daylord deity. You count them slowly, slightly more than the 13 numbers of the Tzolk'in, slightly less than the 20-day names. Some scholars propose this discrepancy hints at a lost ritual number. Others say it refel ex scribal error. Historians still argue whether these figures were active participants in divinatory ceremonies or simply talismans displayed for awe. Your hand drifts to the cold stone edge, and you press a small, one of the dozen finger-sized pegs set into the outer rim. The wheel shudders and rotates 1/8 of an inch, as precise as a watchmaker's gear. You suppress the urge to tweet this, remembering your phone is long gone. But you think, if only my Outlook calendar could adjust with this kind of precision. And prophecy. A playful sarcasm escapes you. Reminder, don't schedule important meetings during the blood moon, folks. Above the wheel, a fresco dome depicts a night sky alive with painted constellations. A jaguar, a vulture, a scorpion. You tilt your head back, the heat from the torches warming your neck, and the scent of damp plaster and maize husk rises from the floor. You recall that Mayan priests considered the jaguar to traverse the underworld night sky, marking the months when they should sow deep soil crops. That correlation between mythic beast and seasonal cycle is pure chronomancy using time's pattern to divine the earth's next mood. You step off the ledge onto a mosaic path that spirals inward, the tesserae, glinting with traces of cinnabar paint that once made the floor sparkle like sunrise. Each step forward takes you 13 days into the Tuzo can count. And you feel the rhythm settle in your bones. 13, 20, 13, 20 mirroring your breath. The room tilts in slow motion as you follow the spiral toward the center, where a small altar holds a faded codex and a handful of maize kernels tied with a red thread. The head priest stands there, fingers stained with pigment, his eyes closed. A low hum vibrates through your chest as he murmurs a prayer to Exchel, goddess of moon, water, and weaving. Historians still argue whether such prayers were meant to synchronize human will with celestial cycles or to manipulate nature through a ritual theater. You can almost taste the words hanging on the humid air, sweet as overripe guava, sharp as clay dust. When he opens his eyes, they glow in the torchlight, hawk-sharp and ancient. He holds out a codex leaf painted with a date. 0 Papa Wayab Day, a time of transition and danger. He gestures to the maize bundle. Do you understand? The crops must be planted at dawn tomorrow. But only after forging through 5 days of liminal chaos, unloved days when the veil between worlds feels thinnest. You kneel, picking up a grain of maize and tracing the knobby yellow curve between your thumb and forefinger. It feels warm, oily, primordial. A fringe myth insists these kernels were soaked in Venus water, collected during a Venus transit to heighten psychic reception. You chuckle, remembering your last herbal tea fiasco. But here in the hushed gloom, you almost believe it. The priest lifts a conch trumpet and fills his lungs. A single note pulses through the room, resonating east to the wall where the dawn will break. You shiver, the vibration traveling along the carved grooves, through the wheel, and into your spine. It's a living, engineering marvel, a musical key that both marks time and unlocks it. Outside this chamber, the jungle thunders with cicada song, each insect a metronome counting the seconds until sunrise. You rise, pockets empty except for a stray maize kernel, and step back onto the spiral. The wheel clicks softly as it returns to its resting mark, sealing the date until the next rite. You run a hand across the carved Daylord figures, feeling the subtle relief of snake gods and moon women, each encoded with mythic force. You ascend the stairs as the horizon begins to lighten with peach and lavender. The calendar chambers. Threshold glows in twilight, and you pause to look back at the domed ceiling, where painted clouds drift across painted stars, an eternal projection of cycles humans still chase. You step into the corridor, the torchlights shimmer following your retreating form, and carry with you the weight of calendars carved in stone. Ahead, the courtyard awaits, where scribes will copy new inscriptions based on tomorrow's divinations. You recall the innumerable sands of Egypt, the ziggurats of Mesopotamia, the stones of Stonehenge and sea that across continents. Priests shared the same impulse, to weave myth into time itself, so each season's secret could be read before it arrived. You exit into the night air, the chorus of insects rippling through leaves like cosmic static. You palm the maize kernel and feel its promise, a harvest foretold by gods and glyphs alike. You step into the dark, heart pounding with that familiar thrill. Time is not passing you by. You're part of its sacred dance. You emerge into a velvet black courtyard, the night air cool against your skin, and the scent of smoldering cedar from yesterday's incense still lingers on your robes. The temple's torches have dimmed, only a few lanterns flicker like ancient fireflies guiding your steps. You settle on a low granite bench, tilting your head back to drink in the star-strewn sky. A distant dog barks, echoing through narrow alleyways, while a gentle breeze rustles through olive trees. You feel the same hush that must have greeted priests across millennia whenever the heavens announced, like something extraordinary without warning. A streak of pale light tears through the firmament, a comet blazing a silent trail across the sky. You catch your breath, the world pausing as that long-haired visitor tugs on your wonder. Mainstream records show Babylonian astronomers as early as 240 BCE inscribed appearances of comets on clay tablets, linking these celestial interlopers to dynastic change and divine wrath. You remember the fish oil smear on your temples today? It would only make your phone screen greasy, but for those priests, it might have offered a sharper view as they squinted upward. Historians still argue whether such records reflected systematic skywatching or were opportunistic scribbles after some pesky dynasty fell. A hooded priest glides into view, sliding a shallow bronze bowl of water toward you. He gestures to the sky's reflection, fine ripples catching moonlight and comet's tail alike. Priests in ancient China around 100 BCE used similar water mirror techniques to track eclipse shadows, an established fact, from museum wall text. He whispers, "Look here," and you lean closer, inhaling that sharp tang of metal wafting off the bowl's rim. You see the comet's head elongated across the reflected surface, flickering as wind skims the water. It's almost cinematic. You half expect a hyper-realistic CGI trailer titled "When Comets Attack." The priest taps the bowl 3 times, a ritual count echoing like raindrops in a cave. Another priest, perched on a low step, rakes handfuls of powdered mica into the bowl. You cringe, remember that glittery mess in the oil mixtures. But he insists the sparkling motes amplify the comet's power. A fringe claim suggests PayPal astrologers later ground actual meteorite fragments into pigments for disaster paintings, believing cosmic dust carried apocalyptic messages. You stifle a laugh at the thought of priests stirring stardust latte art. Somewhere nearby, a small bell tinkles, a cue for the temple chorus to begin a low chant. You feel a vibration under your knees, a subtle drumbeat in the earth. Torches around the courtyard flare to life, spilling wavering light across sandstone walls carved with dragon-headed deities. The comet glows brighter now, its tail fanning like a celestial feather. You shiver, not from cold, but from the electric hush that makes your scalp tingle. Historians still argue whether comets were seen primarily as omen bringers or simply cosmic curiosities that gained mythic status over time. Breeze carries the faint, metallic snap of dried olive leaves. You lean forward to catch the scent of hot sand mingled with burned wood. A priest passes you a small stencil carved in red, an abstract glyph representing the hairy star. You press it against the water's surface, dropping a single lotus petal inside. The reflection shifts, sending ripples that scatter gleaming dots of mica across your palm. You cup the water, feeling it slosh oddly warm. And a fringe theory flits through your mind. Did some priests actually heat their omen bowls over coals to mimic the fire of flaming comets? Probably less accurate than your weather app, but far more dramatic. Your phone would buzz with emergency alerts if this happened today. But tonight, all you have is this hushed ceremony. You lean close as the chief priest raises his voice in hush-whispered prophecy. When the tail splits the moon's path, kings shall falter and rivers overrun. You feel goosebumps chase across your arms, and you quietly quip to yourself. Note to self: stock up on canned goods and portable altars. A chuckle escapes one of your 3 mandatory jokes right on cue. Moments later, the comet arcs away, and the courtyard returns to softer shadows. You stagger back a bit, blinking. Nearby, a carved relief shows a comet perched atop a step. Ziggurat, an image found on Babylonian cylinder seals dating to the 7th century BCE. That's a mainstream gem. Mesopotamians documented celestial portents on clay cylinders that rolled like primitive tweets. You tap the carved glyph with your fingertip, mused by the thought of ancient scribes, literally rolling out the news. No sooner have you let that thought settle than a low rumble rolls across the sky. It's not thunder, but the beginning of a lunar eclipse. The moon, high and full, slowly succumbs to an earth shadow veil, darkening like a bruise spreading across its surface. Local priests gather in a semicircle, raising copper mirrors to angle slivers of moonlight onto an elevated platform. By the time the eclipse reaches totality, the moon's disk glows deep red blood moon, and you taste iron on your tongue as if the heavens themselves bled. You stand alongside them. It's feeling warmer now, your breath clouding in the cool night breeze. You smirk, remembering your last camping trip where you nearly froze just to see a meteor shower. Here, you're practically mid-ritual, wearing robes you didn't even pack. You lean to the priest beside you and whisper, "Any chance of a refund on my pilgrimage fare?" He grins, eyes reflecting coppery moonlight. Ancient Babylonian priests could predict lunar eclipses using what we now call the Saros cycle, a sequence of 18 years, 11 days, and 8 hours end. That's a mainstream fact they'd brag about if they had smartphones. You imagine them swapping eclipse dates like baseball cards. Got the eclipse of 703 BCE? I need that one for my collection. Historians still argue whether their ability to forecast eclipses was true astronomy or mostly lucky pattern recognition, reinforced by royal archivists eager for bragging rights. A sudden gust rattles the mirrors, and for a heartbeat, you think the eclipse is undone, a momentary teenage prank in the sky. But the crimson moon persists, hovering above the temples. Parapets. You reach out, wanting to touch that somber glow, but your hand only brushes cool night air. A playful sarcasm surfaces. Wow, glowing red. Next time, just wear a neon sign. Fruit bats. The bowl of water at your feet ripples, mirroring the bloody moon in miniature, like a cosmic poached egg. The temple's guards tap their spears for silence. In unison, the priests swing their staffs, carving slow arcs through the air, signatures meant to capture the eclipse's essence. You close your eyes, hearing wooden staves swish through the air, catching faint bits of the lantern's glow. A fringe myth says some priests used those staffs as lightning rods during storms, believing that harnessed power brought clearer readings of omens. You open your eyes, half expecting a spark, but only see the deep red orb slipping through shadow. When the eclipse finally wanes, leaving the moon pale and wan under the returning sunlight, a hush falls over the courtyard. The comet is gone, the moon's glow is soft again. Feel the weight of 2 skyborn events pressing at your shoulders like a benediction. The chief priest lowers his staff and bows his head, an invitation for the oracle's final judgment. He intones, "Harvest will stagger, but we shall prevail with ritual and sacrifice." You nod, wondering if he's accounting for crop failure or just making small talk. You rise, the cool night sliding away as the moonlight dims. The lanterns, gutter, and the stars reclaim the sky. You sip from a flask of spiced wine offered by an acolyte, warmth and cinnamon flooding your senses. The priests disperse, leaving only bare stones and your echoing footsteps. You pause at the edge of the courtyard, arms wrapped around yourself, savoring the silence. The comet's whisper and the eclipse's hush burn into your memory. Reminders that the sky can append your day or your rain in an instant. You walk toward the temple's entrance, recalling that fish oil smudge on your forehead, the mica from earlier rituals clinging to your robes. Above you, the heavens seem calmer now, but you know they're merely plotting their next surprise. You step into the corridor, lantern light flickering along old murals of gods astride serpents, and carry with you the knowledge that the priests who decoded comets and eclipses shaped destinies as easily as they traced circles in the sand. You step from the courtyard's whispering shadows into a vaulted hall where geometry reigns supreme. The floor beneath your sandals is laid in an intricate grid of interlocking hexagons, each tile cut from pale limestone so precisely that you can barely feel the grout lines. Lantern light pools in perfect circles on the stones, dancing across edges and vortices. You inhale the faint scent of chalk dust and beeswax stools of masons and glazers alike. Ahead, a grand arch frames the far wall, its curve spanning exactly half a circle, every inch measured to mirror the heavens. Mainstream records show that by 450 BCE Greek, architects employed such semicircular arches based on the idealized circle of Euclid's elements. Though here it feels less like textbook math and more like whispered divinity. You run your finger along the smooth voussoir where stones meet, marveling at how each wedge fits without mortar. Your gaze drifts upward to the ceiling, where octagonal coffers form a honeycomb pattern, 8 sides converging in perfect unity. Historians still argue whether those octagons celebrated 8 lunar phases or simply made the roof lighter. A stray mote of dust drifts through a shaft of light, rotating slowly before settling an effortless demonstration of rotational symmetry. You might replicate in a modern CAD program. You wander to a side alcove, where 2 triangular niches flank a central panel carved with concentric circles, Vesica Pisces pattern. You crouch, tracing the 2 overlapping discs. Noticing the ratio of intersection creates an almond shape, said to echo the eye of the divine. You feel oddly watched, as if that almond shape holds a secret meant only for your pupils. Fringe theorists claim that if you align your vision precisely at the niche's center, the intersection lines vibrate at a subsonic frequency, attuned to human brainwaves. You hum a low note, hearing nothing more than your own echo dot. In the center of the hall lies a square dais marked by 4 recessed channels forming a perfect right angle. The priests here borrowed the 3-4-5 triangular mainstream fact. Egyptians used it from as early as 2600 BCE to achieve true right angles in pyramid bases to lay out temple foundations. You step onto one corner of the dais and stretch your arms wide, touching 2 channels at once. You imagine surveyors with knotted ropes measuring these lengths, chanting numbers like prayers. A sensation of harmony ripples through you, as if the hall itself hums with numeric resonance. You lean your cheek against the cool stone of a column carved with spiraling Fibonacci sequences, numbers that appear in sunflower heads, nautilus shells, and cathedral spiral staircases. Historians still argue whether medieval masons discovered Fibonacci while traveling through the Levant, or merely stumbled upon the pattern by eye. The hall's geometry extends to the light fixtures. 12 lanterns hang in a perfect circle overhead, each 50 degrees apart. You press your palm on a lantern's wrought iron ring and feel a subtle warmth from its recent refueling. A stray ember drifts downward, landing in the center of the dais with a hiss on leftover incense, ash. You smirk, remembering the smoke rituals at Stonehenge and wondering if this ember will send up a signal to chthonic gods below rather than solar deities above. You walk to a lofty gallery reached by a spiral staircase, another geometric marvel. The stair winds in a perfect Archimedean spiral whose pitch increases evenly with each turn, so your ascent feels like climbing a living nautilus shell. You sense a gentle pull at your hips, the subtle centrifugal flirt of the curve. Fringe writers whisper that such staircases channel earthly energies upward, funneling lightning away during storms. Though you suspect architects were simply replacing heavy columns with elegant supports at the gallery's edge, you peer down through an oculus. Set in the apex of a dome, the opening is a perfect circle, 8 feet wide, enough to frame the noon sun when it stands directly overhead on the equinox. You recall Egyptians orienting pyramids within 3 arc minutes of true north, a mainstream feat of surveying using circumpolar stars. You stand there, tracing the sky through stone, feeling the world tick by 1 degree at a time beneath the oculus. The dome's interior is painted with concentric rings of color alternating lapis blue and gold, leaf evoking the sky's gradient. From zenith to horizon, you hear the faint drip of water far below and catch the odor of damp lime plaster. You tilt your head back, letting the dome's perfect curvature cradle your gaze. Historians still argue whether such painted ceilings, aimed to mimic celestial vaults for worshippers or simply impress travelers with the temple's wealth. You step down the marble steps that circle the hall. Each steps rise and run following the golden ratio to create a comfortable, gay tan ergonomic detail perfected by Roman engineers. Your foot hits each tread with a soft thump, the hallway's acoustic design ensuring you can't quite pinpoint the source of your echo. A fringe anecdote suggests these echoes were used for secret communications across the hall priests hiding messages in reverberations. You whisper, "Hello." But all you get is your own voice bouncing away. On a low pedestal stands a small model of the entire temple, carved from ivory and ebony. You pick it up and spin it between your fingers, noticing the polygonal base is a regular icosagon, 20 equal sides meant to represent the 20 visible constellations of winter. You turn the model over and discover tiny notches at each vertex, perhaps a calendar code, perhaps nothing more than decoration. Historians still argue whether these scale models served as ritual teaching tools or were status symbols for visiting dignitaries. You replace the model and run your fingertips along the edge of a giant compass etched into the Florin 8-pointed star inside a circle. One point aligns with the high altar, another with the doorway you entered. Each line seems to map a star's rising point on the horizon, an earthly projection of cosmic coordinates. You feel a ripple of awe, imagining priests plotting positions by night, then carving them into stone by day. A breeze drifts through a stained glass window high on the wall, its panels cut into triangles and circles that cast kaleidoscopic patterns across the hall. You step into one rainbow shard and watch the multicolored light flicker on carved glyphs on the dais. You smile, thinking, cathedral glass in the 12th century borrowed these same shapes to teach biblical stories in light. Bin a universal grammar. You pivot on a heel and glide toward the exit, the hall's harmony humming under your feet. Lantern light dims behind you, and you feel its warmth recede like a departing heartbeat. As you cross the threshold, the perfect angles and ratios are replaced by crooked timber beams and rough flagstones. You carry the hall's resonance in your chest, a gentle, ringing sense that the cosmos can be mapped, measured, and echoed in stone. You pause outside in the cooling air, tracing a rectangle, your footsteps just carved in the dust, your own transient geometry. You breathe in, tasting the night, incense, chalk, and the faintest echo of cosmic rigor. You remember the fish oil smeared eyelids, the dancing smoke at Stonehenge, the coil of incense in the altar chamber, and realize that geometry has always been the silent language priests used to whisper the sky's secrets into human hands. You slip through a narrow archway from the geometry hall into a corridor lit by wavering oil lamps. the air growing thick with dust motes and the sweet musk of aged parchment. The walls here are lined with oak shelves bowed under the weight of scrolls, codices, and bundled papyrus rolls tied with fraying linen cords. You let your fingertips hover above a scroll case and taste the faint tang of beeswax from centuries old. Seals' sensory detail as vivid as the cedar incense back in the altar chamber. A bespectacled archivistrist glides out from a shadowed niche. It's offering you a leather-bound folio. He opens it on a stone lectern, and you crouch to examine the columns of cuneiform alongside star charts. Around 668 BCE, King Ashurbanipal's library in Nineveh amassed thousands of tablets, recording celestial omens and planetary observations. Mainstream fact that underpins our knowledge of Babylonian astronomy. You trace a wedge mark indicating Jupiter's conjunction with the moon, imagining those priests tuning in long before skywatching apps existed. The archivist murmurs as he lights a slender candle, the flame flickering across diagrams of epicycle circles, within circles drawn to map planetary paths. Historians still argue whether these diagrams represent genuine proto-scientific models or were simply ritual art dressed in scholarly garb. You inhale the waxy scent mixing with papyrus dust and let your modern mind quip, "I can't even keep my Outlook calendar straight." Circleception seems advanced. Somewhere deep in the stacks, a tapestry hides a narrow door. You slip through it, brushing aside time-worn threads to reveal a small vaulted alcove. Inside sits a single chest carved from ebony and inlaid with silver concentric circles. A Greek inscription reads, Lambda, Y, Beta, Rho, Omicron Sigma, Theta, Epsilon Upsilon Theta, the Book of Thoth, or so legend claims. Fringe theorists whisper that its pages were written in invisible ink, only legible by moonlight, reflected off polished obsidian. Though you suspect that's as practical as smearing fish oil on your phone's camera lens. You kneel, pressing a brass latch that clicks open. Within lies a hefty codex of vellum leaves bound in dark leather. As you flip to the first page, your lamp's glow unveils a diagram spheres nested like Russian dolls, each ring labeled with deity names and geometric ratios. You taste copper on your tongue from the lamp's metal wick holder and feel the vellum's velvet roughness under your fingertips. A quirky footnote jotted in Greek mentions planet beyond Saturn detected by priest astronomer Zeus, Tsarizia Sudra. Likely a later interpolation, but amusing nonetheless. The archivist priest shushes you, pointing to margin marks where a different hand has scribbled star lists in tiny Latin script. You tilt your head, squinting at microink so fine it rivals modern fountain pens. Fringe aficionados claim these marginals predict Uranus's discovery centuries earlier. Cosmic graffiti, pranksters later added. Historians still argue whether those marginalia reflect authentic, ancient insight or medieval scholars showing off their pseudo-astronomical chops. You crack a small grin, whispering, Uranus. More like Urana's classic astronomy humor than instantly regret the pun in this hallowed space. The archivist gives you a faint, patient smile and waves toward the next folio. You turn the page to reveal text interwoven with star conjuring. Spells and vocations to deities like Nabu and Thoth, each accompanied by tiny star-shaped seals pressed into the parchment. You can almost feel the ancient ritual power humming beneath the ink. A distant scrawl of shuffling feet and hushed chants drifts through the corridor. You glance at the ceiling's ribs, carved with faint outlines of a spiral galaxy uncanny for a hall built nearly 2 millennia before telescopes. A mainstream fact, the Hermetic corpus, compiled around the 3rd century CE in Hellenistic Egypt, blended Greek philosophy with Egyptian ritual, influencing medieval alchemists. Some scholars suggest parts of this codex echo Hermetic ideas. Testament to cultural cross-pollination. You notice a tattered margin note, enigmatic script, discussing the five-pronged staff of creation, a shift from the usual three-pointed scepter. Fringe writers insist this staff controlled quantum threads of reality. Do you imagine ancient priests recruiting interns to debug cosmic code? Historians still argue whether such references were genuine esoteric knowledge or symbolic metaphors. For ritual authority, as you study the scroll, a chill runs down your spine. You draw your robe tighter, recalling the chill of dawn atop the ziggurats. The candle sputters, and the archivist priest leans close, murmuring, "The most dangerous secrets were locked here by our forebears, lest the world learn too much too soon." You taste the tension in his words. Hey, maybe that's the real cosmic secret. Knowledge always carries risk. With a soft click, you reclose the codex and return it to the chest. Hearing the latch echo like a closing drum, you rise, brushing crumbs of dust from your robes as if shedding yesterday's visions. Behind the tapestry, the Isle of Scrolls seems to sigh around you, the parchment bundles leaning like silent confessors. You pause, letting the lingering scent of wax and papyrus coat your senses. A sensory bookmark. Stepping back into the lamplit corridor, you realize these hidden texts, some genuine, some legendary, all tantalizing shaped worldviews from Babylon to Byzantium. They offered maps of the heavens and instructions for rituals to pluck secrets from the void. Whether priests truly cracked cosmic laws or wove mythology into scholarly scrolls, those dusty archives remind you that curiosity and storytelling have always marched hand in hand. You press a hand to the cool wall, tracing a carved spiral, echoing the Book of Thoth's silver inlay. A breath later, you're back in the geometry hall, stone angles replacing vellum curves. Yet, in your mind's eye, you still see papyrus rolls orbiting on dark shelves, waiting for tomorrow's seeker to dare unroll their mysteries. You slip through a narrow doorway into a chamber bathed in a soft glow, where shafts of sunlight filter through a circular aperture high above. The air here feels warm against your skin, scented faintly of stone, dust, and the tank of heated metal. Along a low shelf, you spy a series of polished discs, one of rock crystal, another of smoky quartz, a few made from dark obsidian that almost swallowed the light whole. Priests around 750 BCE in Assyria crafted what we now call the Nimrod lens from rock crystal, using it to magnify small objects and maybe even start fires on off-cited mainstream, fact you might have stumbled upon in every archaeological mag. You lean forward, tracing the bevel of one circular stone. Feeling its cool curvature under your fingertip, you notice a shallow groove carved into the shelf, where drops of water once pooled to test each lens's clarity. Historians still argue whether priests simply admired the optical effects as part of ritual spectacle or genuinely studied magnification to chart starry details through a proto-telescope. You imagine them huddled in flickering torchlight, coaxing schematics out of curved glass and crystal before coffee or calculus even existed. A nearby brazier crackles, embers hissing like distant comets. A priest lifts a small bronze frame fitted with a thin piece of polished mycoquartz laminate, so fragile it gleams like a dragonfly's wing. He positions it between the brazier and a clay tablet, focusing a tiny scorching point that scorches a charred circle into the clay. You lean in and inhale the faint scent of charred clay and saffron oil from the priest's sleeve. Fringe lore suggests that some temple seers believed such pinpoints of light channeled solar divinity directly into the earth. You smirk at the thought of a sun god DIY home improvement show. Your gaze moves upward to a slender contraption mounted on the wall, two polished obsidian mirrors angled to face each other, reflecting the aperture's sunlight back and forth until a narrow beam shoots across the room. You step into that beam, the light snapping your eyes open like an alarm clock, and you can practically hear the walls humming with potential. The mirrors are set on swivels carved from olive wood, counterbalanced by small lead weights, elegant. Designed for the late Iron Age, you lean close, brushing your knuckles against burnished metal, tasting a metallic tang in the air. A priest beckons you over, offering a small handheld lens carved from pale serpentine. When you peer through it at a glyph carved on the far wall, the image blooms in crisp relief. The carved lines sharpen. Cracks in the stone vanish, and a scene of star spirits dancing around a crescent moon emerges as if freshly painted. Blink and realize you're seeing what no naked eye could catch. Microcarvings intended for ritual code. You whisper, "I can't even read the fine print on my smartphone." This is next-level magnification. A soft chuckle escapes you. It's one of your 3 designated jokes. You set the serpentine lens aside and turn to a low pedestal holding a pair of round, slightly convex discs set in bronze rims. These are early spectacles lens halves fitted into pivoting frames that rest on the bridge of the nose. Legend says priests use them during midday rituals to examine sunspots and tiny blemishes on the solar disk. Though mainstream consensus credits Pliny the Elder's natural history for preserving the earliest description of glass convex magnifiers around the 1st century CE. Historians still argue whether these were optical instruments for scientific study or simply ornate props to awe initiates. Next to the spectacles lies a polished copper mirror. It's back inscribed with a spiral motif echoing those you've seen on altar staffs. The reflective surface is battered but still gleams undersell. The skylight. You grasp it with both hands, tilting it so streaks of sunlight converge on a pile of dried herbs. The herbs ignite almost immediately, wisps of smoke curling upward like ghostly serpents. You inhale the scent of burning bay leaves and incense. Resin and wonder if the priests used this mirror both for ritual illumination and to kindle ceremonial fires without flint. On a nearby table sits a curious apparatus, a small wooden box with a peephole on one side and an aperture on the other. A flickering oil lamp placed outside projects an inverted image onto the chamber's far wall in early camera obscura. It's a mainstream fact that Aristotle noted circa 350 BCE. A light passing through a pinhole casts an image on an opposite surface, but here you're standing inside the mechanism itself. A fringe claim insists that Egyptian sun temples used similar devices to project solar eclipses onto temple walls, so that priests could trace the moon's silhouette safely. You can't help picturing a Bronze Age planetarium show. You lean back against a cool stone column, tasting a hint of copper in the air where someone has polished a new mirror panel. Your heart hammers as you imagine those ancients carefully honing each disc, trusting that every curve and surface would unlock dreams of distant stars. You remember the tweaked fish oil smear on your eyelids, pointless against this focused beam of light, but maybe a ritual homage to optical lore. A hush falls over the chamber. One priest raises a serpentine lens to the circular opening above, aligning it so the sun's rays concentrate into a bright circle on the floor. He steps aside, and a second priest places a scroll beneath the focused beam. Minute script scorches into the parchment in rapid script letters, burning themselves onto the page. The ritual is called writing by the sun, a fringe rite said to inscribe divine messages without ink. You feel a tickle at your nose dust from the scroll mingling with acrid smoke, and you cough, muttering, "My printer can barely do double-sided, much less burn holy text." The priests exchange solemn nods, their faces aglow in the concentrated light. You notice one of them holds a small mirror to catch stray rays and direct them into a pair of rudimentary eyepieces mounted on a tripod. When you peer through, the distant mountain peaks beyond the temple's walls come into sharp focus. You hear your own breath, catch pebbles, trees, and even a wandering goat, crisp as though rendered in HD. Quirky anecdote suggests that some priests believed these lenses allowed them to gaze into other realms. Seeing spirits at a distance? You wink at the thought of spirit-zapping binoculars. You hand back the eyepiece, your fingers tingling from the warmth lingering on the bronze. A priest uncorks a small vial of silver-based paste and smears it onto a blank lens. When he cleans it, the lens appears clearer than before, an early chemical polishing compound containing tin and ash. You sniff the air and detect a trace of burnt almonds and unexpected almond-like fragrance from crushed sulfur compounds. Historians still argue whether such polishing recipes were shared in scribal schools or jealously guarded in priestly lineages. As sunlight wanes, you watch the shadows lengthen across each optical instrument. Their polished surfaces shimmer like liquid mercury, reflecting the slow dimming of day. You feel a soft melancholy in your chest, a recognition that these artifacts, once cutting edge, now lie silent and cold until tomorrow's ritual. You step forward and lift a small lens to your eye for one last glance at the chamber's far wall. Now blurred by your own tears of awe, the priest extinguishes the brazier and the chamber darkens. You rub your palms together, feeling the faint dust of mica and metal on your skin. One last ember of torchlight flickers against the lenses, sending prismatic specks dancing across the walls. As you turn to leave, you whisper, "Next stop, buying sunglasses." A gentle laugh echoes behind you, part amusement, part reverence. You exit the chamber, the corridor's cooler air wrapping around you like a silk cloak. Behind you, the optical tools rest in silent vigilance keys to magnify the world and the mind. You trace a finger along your temple, remembering fish oil smears and ember-written scrolls, carrying those luminous impressions into the deepening dusk. You step into a vaulted hall where oil lamps burn low and walls curve inward, forming a cozy, womb-like space, heavy with the scent of parchment and soft beeswax. This is the Astral Academy, a priestly school dedicated entirely to reading the heaven's thick wooden desks, scarred by stylus tips and ink stains, stretch in neat rows toward a raised dais where an elder priest stands next to a star chart fresco. You sink into a rush of anticipation today. You're a pupil in a millennia-old classroom where the universe itself is the textbook. The elder gestures to a massive clay tablet anchored in a swivel frame. On its surface are rows of wedge-shaped signs paired with tiny star symbols, the earliest sections of the Enuma Anu Enlil Omen Compendium. Compiled around 1000 BCE in Babylon, can almost feel the weight of those 70-plus tablets, each one a lesson in how lunar eclipses, planetary conjunctions, and sunspots foretold droughts, wars, or royal births. You trace a symbol for a lunar eclipse and imagine scribes copying these texts by torchlight, their breath fogging the clay in the chill night air. Sitting beside you, a fellow studenta novice clutched in soft Wolflix ink across her palms, smudging her lesson on planetary motions. A fringe rumor floats through the hall that some masters taught students to chew poppy seeds before studying planetary hours, believing the mild narcotic would sharpen visionary skills. You chuckle, recalling your last sleepy poppy seed bagel nearly put you into a mid-morning nap instead of ephemeris calculations. The elder priest begins the day's lecture. Today, you'll master the 12 houses of the zodiac and their influences on human temperament. He taps a reed staff against a circular zodiac chart painted on the wall. You feel a vibration up your spine as the staff's tip traces paths between Aries and Taurus, Cancer and Leo, each sign accompanied by tiny glyphs etched in red cinnabar. Mainstream scholars note that by the Hellenistic period, around the 2nd century BCE, astrologers in Egypt had established these 12 divisions based on Babylonian prototypes. You lean forward, inhaling the temps of iron-laced ink, and watch as the elder poetically describes Mars in the sixth house, bringing restlessness, and sharpened blades, a phrase so vivid it makes. You glance at your fingers as if expecting them to sprout fingernails like talons. Historians still argue whether these planetary descriptions reflected empirical observation or merely recycled mythic narratives to justify royal decisions. You murmur to yourself, or maybe they just wanted an excuse to carry swords. Next, the priest splits the class into small groups around ink-soaked papyrus scrolls. Your group studies the Dagos tablet, where scholars have recently found annotations suggesting a lost Thothian manual on star binding, a fringe tidbit, positing that priests could capture astral spirits in clay seals for later interrogation. You tentatively press your fingers to the soft clay model and imagine cracking open a bag of ancient cosmic popcorn. Then shake your head at the absurdity. The elder glides between groups, offering corrective taps to styluses and whispered guidance. In Sumerian accented Akkadian, "Don't angle your tablet like that. You'll distort the ecliptic coordinates." You feel the rough clay beneath your palm as you adjust your tilt. Your heart skips. There's an intimacy here. A tactile communion with the methods that birthed empire-shaking omens. A novice near you sneezes, sending a puff of dust motes swirling in a beam of lantern light. You inhale the dust, tasting chalk and old wool, and crack a sleepy joke. Guess we're adding lunar humility to the curriculum. A soft chuckle ripples through the benches, buoying the scholarly hush. The class reconvenes at the dais for a demonstration of astrolabes, flat, bronze discs engraved with star positions and movable pointers. The elder pries open a wooden case and spins an armillary sphere twice your height, its rings interlocking in delicate arcs. He positions the sphere so that the Great Bear aligns with the Academy's north marker and challenges you to calculate the local sidereal time. You grip the sphere's ring, your fingers brushing a cold patch where countless apprentices have held on before. Mainstream historians agree that armillary spheres were in use by Greek astronomers like Hipparchus in the 2nd century BCE. These priests may have developed simpler proto-versions centuries earlier. You adjust the pointer, murmuring planetary longitudes under your breath, and the elder nods approval, warming you more than the lamp's glow. Historians still argue whether priests simply used these instruments for ritual spectacle or genuinely strove for precision in celestial measurement. You grin, thinking, if only my GPS were this elegant. The hour grows late, and a low bell tolls from a side chapel, signaling the transmigration versus lesson. You shuffle into a shadowy alcove where parchments describe how the planetary alignments influence not just your day, but your afterlife journey through 7 celestial gates. You unroll one delicate scrollets, edges frayed like moth-eaten robes, and catch the scent of myrrh varnish. Sticky and sweet. A fringe legend insists that reciting these verses under a Jupiter-Moon conjunction opens a portal to commune with departed kings. An idea you find more compelling than your Monday morning commute. Standing in the alcove's hush, you recite an incantation under your breath, feeling the cadence vibrate in your chest. Whether the recitation unlocks anything beyond the echoing stone, you can't tell, but your awareness sharpens. You realize these words, like the cosmos, are part myth, part science, all ritual. Historians still argue whether such verses were practical guides for the soul or theatrical enactments reinforcing priestly authority as the lesson winds down. The elder presents each student with a small start stoke soaked overnight in hyssop, oil, and lunar dew, intended to grant uninterrupted visions when reciting omens. You hold the cold brass disc against your palm and feel its weight, a promise that you're now part of this lineage. Charged with interpreting the sky's secret grammar, you file out of the alcove, into a twilight courtyard where the air smells of jasmine and damp stone. Other students huddle by a small brazier, exchanging notes on Mercury's elusive retrogrades and plotting the next night's observation schedule. You sip from a communal bowl of spiced wine clove, cinnamon, and a hint of mandrake root warmth spilling through you. You nudge a friend and quip, "Just imagine if we had a Blackboard app for this," earning a round of sleepy laughter above. The constellations wheel silently, indifferent to human ambition. Yet here, within these walls of chalk, dust, and copper, you've learned that priests transformed those lights into language, courses mapping planetary paths, tables predicting omens, verses invoking cosmic powers. These academies taught students to read fate in patterns, making destiny as tangible as ink on clay dot. You touch the start token in your pocket and sense the tradition humming through your veins. Whether these teachings were proto-science or elaborate scriptural theater, they shaped kingdoms guiding harvests, marriages, and wars. You breathe in the jasmine night, feeling the Academy's pulse align with your own. As you step into the corridor's shadow, you carry the hush of sacred lecture halls, knowing that tomorrow you'll rise before dawn to chart the stars again. You wander into a wide, low-ceilinged chamber lined with polished wood panels and shelves of weathered treatises. The air here smells of old ink, oiled leather bindings, and just a hint of lingering incense. You settle onto a cushioned bench, facing a carved wooden dais where two figures in priestly robes are locked in quiet debate, their voices soft as wind over barley fields. Tonight, you're eavesdropping on the age-old question. Did these priests truly grasp the universe's natural laws, or were they simply masters of ritual spectacle? Across the days, one priest taps a clay tablet studded with astronomical data, the sorrow cycle. A sequence of roughly 18 years, 11 days, and 8 hours. Used by Babylonian priests around 700 BCE to forecast lunar eclipses with uncanny reliability. That's a mainstream fact you've read in museum plaques and history books. He traces the cycles with his stylus, murmuring about accuracy. The other priest shakes his head, pointing instead to a scroll of prayers meant to invoke moon gods before eclipses, insisting that no amount of calculation could replace divine favor. You lean forward, curiosity stirring as you recall the fish oil smear on your eyelids, this morning totally useless for eclipse watching. But you wore it in solidarity with your ancestors. A gentle smirk tugs at your lips. Guess you'd need both prophecy and spreadsheet skills. A soft chuckle ripples through the chamber as the two priests exchange rueful glances. Historians still argue whether those eclipse records represent true proto-astronomy or were retrofitted with numerical precision to impress royalty. Some scholars point to clay tablets showing incremental refinements in Babylonian lunar tables over centuries. Others counter that the emphasis on omens, if the eclipse is blood red, kings will suffer injustice, reveals a fundamentally theological purpose. A leather-bound codex sits on the dais. It's open 2 pages detailing Nile flood predictions. Egyptian temple scribes in Memphis around 500 BCE monitored the heliacal rising of Sirius to anticipate inundation. Levels an empirical observation that underpinned the kingdom's calendar. You inhale the musty scent of papyrus and imagine those priests rubbing shoulders with farmers in dusty fields, clipboard in hand. It's a mainstream fact you know from hours spent in digital museum tours. Yet the opposing priest leans across and reads aloud an incantation meant to soften the river's anger. You stifle a laugh and catch yourself. Humor is vitally unscientific in a debate chamber. Still, you can't help quipping under your breath. Maybe they needed a prayer app back then. The room remains respectful, but you sense the tension as these two worldviews clash in a shadowed corner. A fringe tidbit peeks out from a stack of marginalia. Some texts claim that certain temple seers tried to weatherbend storms by chanting formulas while manipulating copper rods. They believed metal vibrations could realign wind currents. Think Bronze Age storm cloud tuning forks. You roll your eyes affectionately at the idea of priests as proto-meteorologists, armed with God's own tuning forks. On a narrow table, you spot a model of an armillary sphere identical to the one you handled at the Astral Academy. One priest points to its delicate brass rings and praises its role in isolating celestial spheres. The other dismisses it as theatrical prop, a cosmic mobile for the pious. Historians still argue whether Greeks and Hellenistic temple astronomers genuinely used armillary spheres for calculation or chiefly as ritual drama centerpieces. A hush falls as a visiting Confucian-style sage joins the fray. Unfurling a bamboo scroll of Chinese comet records from 200 BCE, he highlights systematic observations, dates, tail lengths, and apparent brightness scored with surprising consistency. Mainstream facts show Chinese temples maintained bureaucratic skywatching offices, logging celestial oddities. Yet he concedes some entries are paired with doom-laden poetry. When the hairy star flares, the empire shivers, suggesting that poetic license might have skewed empirical intent. You lean back, the polished bench creaking under your weight. A stray mote drifts through a beam of lantern light, twirling like a choreographed dancer. You relish the squabble. Each side marshals evidence, cites calculations, then filigrees it with ritual. It's almost adorable, priests chasing both sacred mystery and systematic data. Your eyes wander to an open chest filled with copper fragments. A fringe story suggests that alchemical experiments on these fragments yielded protochemical laws. Priests mixed metal oxides to observe color changing reactions, postulating early notions of transformation and purity. You imagine them jotting notes. Add more sulfur, see flame turn blue. As if hosting the first chemistry vlog without Wi-Fi. You force back a grin, third joke delivered. The two debaters stand and cross the chamber to a rectangular basin of water, an ancient hydrometer. One sets copper floats and measures displacement to estimate grain density, while the other insists this was simply ritual libation equipment, not a scientific tool. Historians still argue whether water clocks and hydrometers' basic fluid dynamics devices were invented for precision timekeeping or ceremonially masking temple downtime. You sniff the damp air, tasting the salt from the basin rim. That behind every device and tablet, there's a dual narrative, one of observation and one of invocation. You're torn, but amused, because today's climate scientists still blend data models with cautionary storytelling. So maybe we never truly left priest-scientist heritage. The head priest summons silence and gestures to a mural depicting elemental diagrams, air, fire, water ranged in interlocking triangles. He lectures on natural balance, pointing out how Egyptians mixed oils and soils to study absorption rates under lamp heat. His counterpart counters, "We did not learn science. We invoked gods of balance." The gallery hushes as they spar over semantics. As the debate wanes, both priests exchange respectful bows. You stand, stretching your legs, and rub your bleary eyes. Late night debates always make you squint. A final thought warms you, whether purely empirical or cloaked in ritual. Those priests laid foundations for later natural philosophies. Historians still argue whether their methods qualify as true science. But what's undeniable is their shared drive to decode the world's hidden patterns. You sidle toward the exit, pausing to pat your robe where mica and incense dust still cling. You whisper, "Good luck settling that at the next temple council meeting," and ripple a soft laugh into the empty hall. The lantern light dims as you step back into the corridor, carrying with you the echo of warring worldviews reminders that seeking truth often means dancing between mystery and measurement. You slip away from the hushed echoes of debate and step into a narrow corridor where torchlight flickers against rough-hewn stone. The air grows cooler, carrying a faint whiff of charred parchment and damp mildew. A low wooden door at the corridor's end bears strange scorch mark scars from clandestine rituals once deemed too dangerous for public eyes. You press your palm to the cool wood, tasting a hint of smoked frankincense under your fingertips, and steel yourself for what lies beyond. Inside, the chamber feels sealed off from daylight, walls lined with iron-bound chests and battered scroll cases tied with crimson cords. A lone priest kneels at a small brazier, whispering an incantation as silver smoke drifts upward, carving ghostly scripts in the gloom. You recognize the ritual from fringe lore, a banned rite called the stellar convergence, said to fuse star magic with human will. Mainstream sources note that by the 12th century CE, church authorities across Europe had forbidden such ceremonies, burning texts that described cosmic invocations in city squares. The kneeling priest looks up, his eyes rimmed with exhaustion, and presses a leather flask into your hand. It's warm to the touch, filled with spiced wine to fortify you for what's ahead. You swirl the liquid, inhaling cloves and myrrh. Then take a tentative sip. Sweetness coats your tongue as fiery warmth spreads through your chest. A soft crackle from the brazier punctuates the heavy silence, each ember like a heartbeat marking time until midnight. You creep toward a heavy chest rimmed with brass nails. Its lid bears an engraved eye within a circle, the mark of a secret order once accused of heresy by rising orthodoxies. Historians still argue whether the order's leaders were genuine heretics or simply accidental martyrs crushed under shifting religious tides. Iconoclast in Byzantium around 730 CE famously outlawed images in holy places. And many priest astronomers who annotated celestial diagrams on church icons found themselves exiled or executed. Reverently, you lift the chest's lid. Inside lie brittle parchments scrawled in a chaotic mix of Latin, Greek, and runes. One scroll depicts a diagram of planetary spheres intersecting through the seven deadly sins of fringe tome, called the Lux Infernalis. You trace a finger along its curled edges, tasting the acrid Thames of soot that clings to the vellum. A stray burn mark scorches a depiction of Mars, smeared black like a cosmic bruise. You wince. Holy Heresy Yelp reviews probably said flames scorched your afterlife, 1 star. As you lift another parchment, distant footsteps echo through the corridor. You snap the lid shut and slide the chest aside, revealing a narrow alcove. Inside, a carved stone bench holds 2 sealed books bound in lead plates. One is embossed with a 6-pointed star and the sign of Cancer. The other, a stylized comet tail. These volumes, rumored to contain forbidden star lore, were hidden when the Inquisition first stormed the region. You remember that medieval scholars noted how 14th century inquisitors searched for diabolical devices, rumored to summon meteor showers as divine wrath. You set the lead-bound books on a small lectern and carefully break the seals with a pewter dagger. The first opens to a chapter on meteorite magic, instructions to pulverize iron slag and chant to Mars for martial favor. A mainstream note in the margins hints that medieval metallurgists did indeed experiment with slag in forging early cannon, though using war machinery, not invocations. Historians still argue whether explosive gunpowder recipes evolved from alchemical star lore or from practical combat needs. You reach for the second tome, fingers trembling. Inside lies a celestial atlas of comets and eclipses, annotated in an elegant hand. Tiny sketches show Lucifer's tail encircling church steeples afringe, claimed that some heresiarchs believed celestial fire could cleanse corrupt clergy. You cough, dust swirling in the narrow chamber. The parchment crackles under your touch, and you can almost hear printers' presses in the distance complaining about missing semicolons. A sudden gust rattles the door, and the brazier's flames gutter in protest. You duck, heart thudding like the distant drums of a band procession. The chant from beyond the corridor rises in urgency, a group of hooded figures shouting prayers to guardians of orthodoxy. You realize the secret order has warned you. Revelation attracts zealots. Faster than protein bars at a marathon, you stuff the 2 lead-bound volumes under your robes and edge back into the corridor's gloom. The torchlight now seems hostile, casting every crack in the wall as a potential snitch. You follow a leather strap dangling from the ceiling, leading you to a hidden staircase spiraling downward. Each step echoes hollowly as you descend into an even darker realm. At the bottom, you enter a vaulted crypt, thick with the scent of earth and long-staled blood. On stone slabs lie rusted instruments, iron tongs, chisels, and a curious wheel carved with zodiac symbols. A quarter-moon sliver of light spills through a high, narrow window, painting the instruments in silvery geometry. A fringe tale says, this was the heresy lab, where excommunicated priests continued their cosmic experiments beneath cloistered catacombs. You can feel the chill of disapproval seeping into your bones. Ahead, 2 hooded figures conspire over a circular table, carved into the floor. At its center, a diagram maps the cardinal points to 4 holy elements overlaid with runic sigils, an amalgam of Christian ritual and pre-Christian star worship. You remember mainstream accounts that 9th century monasteries sometimes stockpiled local folk magic to reinforce their sacraments, blending rites until lines blurred. Historians still argue whether these syncretic rites were genuine spiritual revitalization or mere showmanship to ward off pagan suspicion. You clear your throat. The priests glance up, eyes glinting beneath cowl shadows. One holds a silver stylus, poised over a soft clay tablet. He beckons you forward with a curved finger, the other clenching a rosary like a club. You step onto the circle, the chill stone pressing through your sandals, and inhale damp air scented with liturgical incense. And Moss, join us, the first priest whispers, voice tinged with urgency. Tonight, we reclaim what was outlawed, the rite of the solar perihelion. He taps the stylus against the tablet, and a constellation of wedge-marked lines emerges, a star map encoded in sacred geometry. You recognize the pattern as those solstice alignments from ziggurats long ago, only here it's laced with psalmic text. The priest recites verses that once earned him a heresy trial. You can almost hear the slamming of an ecclesiastical gavel. You kneel and press your hand to the tablet, feeling grooves as warm as freshly baked bread. The rosary beads rattle in the other priest's hand as he circles you, murmuring a blessing. You taste metal and incense in the aeronaut combination that stirs your senses. A stray drop of candle wax lands on your palm. You watch it solidify, trapping a tiny flake of ash. You resist the urge to sketch it into your notebook. Note, celestial forensics. The chant deepens, and the room vibrates with low tenor voices. Shadows dance across the crypt's rough walls. You close your eyes, letting the cadence wash over your ritual and revelation twined in every syllable. Modern asides flit through your mind. They didn't have Twitter to break down their musings into 280 characters. But they had soul-deep prayers amplified by clandestine hope. At the chant's peak, a shaft of moonlight slices through the narrow window, illuminating the star wheel on the floor. The wedge lines glow faintly, as if ignited from within. You feel a gentle warmth underfoot. And the conspirator beside you once branded a hereticales, a palm against the glowing stone. A spectral shimmer rises in the center, like a miniature nebula contained in stone. You gasp, flinching as the vision collapses into motes of light. Fragrant smoke curls upward, carrying the final words of the forbidden liturgy into the stone vaults. The priests bow their heads, wounds of orthodoxy and defiance mingling in their exiled faith. You stand, knees wobbly. Robes smelling of moss and soot and something fierce you can't name. Before you slip away, one priest presses a small clay tablet into your hand. It's inscribed with a single line. Stars burn within as they do without. You tuck it into your robe pocket, feeling its cool heft. Outside, the corridor's torchlight seems gentler. It's no longer a threat, but a beacon guiding you back to the world above. You climb the hidden staircase. Each step, a return to daylight. And doctrine's watchful eyes. You emerge into the corridor that once felt suffocating, now bright with dawn's promise. You brush ash from your palms and taste sweet relief on your tongue, a reminder that some secrets demand sacrifice. Historians still argue whether these forbidden rites birthed genuine insight or simply courted doom through cosmic hubris. You pause beneath an archway, inhaling the first clean breath of morning. The world above stirs footsteps, echo, bells chime, and faithful voices murmur in prayer. You slip the clay tablet into your pocket, its silent message pulsing against your hip. As you step into sunlight, you carry the memory of shadows, chance, and the fierce defiance of those who dared read the sky against the church's mandate. You step through an unmarked door into a sunlit courtyard where marble columns catch the morning rays, and the chorus of church bells drifts across terracotta rooftops. A cool breeze tugs at the hem of your robe, carrying the sweet, dusty scent of fresh parchment and smoldering tallow from nearby braziers. A scholar priest in crimson robes hurries past, clutching a pile of brittle scrolls rescued from a collapsed vault. You've walked into early 15th century Europe, where the dust of forgotten priestly libraries is stirring in the golden light of the Renaissance. You trail him through a narrow cloister lined with carved stone benches, each streaked with chalk, marks the ghostly traces of sophomores struggling to master geometry just like you did 2 days ago. Your feet echo on flagstones polished by centuries of sandals, and you notice an olive wood desk groaning under leather-bound folios. This is the heartbeat of rediscovery. Humanists mining monasteries across Italy, France, and Germany for ancient wisdom buried since the fall of Rome. Around 1417 CE, Cugio Bracciolin unearthed Lucretius's De Rerum Natura in a monastic library at St. Galena. Mainstream fact that revolutionized natural philosophy. You can almost taste the triumph in the air. A metallic temples like a freshly minted coin. You slip into a larched scriptorium, where candles gutter against walls hung with star charts copied from Arabic manuscripts. A monk at a slanted desk applies gold leaf to an illuminated Almagest by Ptolemy, its text restored in newly printed Latin translation. Gutenberg's movable type pre-patented in the 1440s hums just beyond a curtained doorway, churning out pages that will spread Ptolemaic astronomy faster than any pigeon post. You lean in, inhaling the resinous scent of wet ink and wood pulp, and imagine 300 copies rolling off the press, each page a prayer to the cosmos. Historians still argue whether this print revolution was driven more by demand for sacred texts or secular curiosity about natural laws. You catch yourself smirking. Today, we binge buy ebooks without lifting quills. But back then, every printed sheet felt like catching lightning in paper form. You lean back, eyes half closed, as you recall that ziggurat priest mapping the sky. By wedge marks on clay, this is the same impulse, just on finer vellum. A young scribe pauses to show you a newly translated line from the Corpus Hermeticum, text attributed to Hermes Trismegistus. He reads aloud, "As above, so below." And you feel a familiar chill, the feeling you got when cedar smoke curled through that alabaster chamber. A fringe tradition holds that hermetic manuscripts encoded mechanical schematics for celestial machines. You whisper, if only they'd included assembly diagrams. And he chuckles, flipping to a margin where someone scrawled a tiny gear sketch. Sunlight slides through lancet windows, onto an oaken lectern where a dusty codex opens to Cicero's De Republi Ica. Priests and scholars debate Cicero's lost book Samo work that supposedly detail the nature of the universe in political metaphor. Some fringe commentators claim its missing chapters outline a steady-state cosmos centuries before modern theory. You smile at the image. Cicero's political analogies transformed into cosmological models, proto-spintronics by way of Senate speeches. A master illuminator invites you to feel a frame brimming with ultramarine pigment made from crushed lapis lazuli, the same mineral you tasted as powder in that alchemy chamber back in section 4. The blue dust sticks to your finger like cosmic glitter. An echo of that smoky incense haze and stardust rituals you've seen across millennia. You inhale a faint mineral temps. And a playful thought flits through your mind. Instagram influencers would kill for this shade. You drift to a wooden lectern where a scholar unrolls a length of papyrus bearing a Greek cherubic astrolabe manual. The diagrams show adjustable plates inscribed with latitude-specific star positions. Around 1350 CE, Islamic astronomers perfected these instruments, and by mid-15th century, European priest astronomers were translating them into Latin. It's a mainstream fact that Gerard of Cremona's translations in Toledo made Ptolemy's Almagest accessible to the West. You trace a brass imprint of the Taurus platter, K, and let the weight of cross-cultural centuries sink in. Historians still argue whether these astrolabe plates circulated primarily as practical navigation tools or as ritual objects used in cathedral ceremonies. You glance at your modern GPS app mock-up, etched in your mind, and quip, no satellites. No problem, just carve your own sky map. A ripple of laughter passes between you and the scholar. Above you, a vaulted ceiling frames a fresco of Apollo driving his chariot across the firmament. You tilt your head back, the fresco's ochre and pastel hues whispered from wall to wall. A friar in the corner counters that such imagery was more liturgical theater than literal blueprint for heliocentrism. A fringe notion holds that some priests hid Copernican hints in these paintings long before the book's 1543 publication. You press your palm to the cool stone, recalling the clandestine crypt and forbidden chants from your last stop, and wonder if the fresco's curves encode a secret orbit. An ivory-handled quill lies on a stone writing slope. You pick it up, dipping it into a goose feather inkpot, scented with juniper and saffron. Echoes of those alchemical oils from section 4. As you press the nib to parchment, you feel the rhythmic scratch like your pulse syncing to ritual time. A scribe instructs you to trace Ptolemy's equant point, teaching that planets circle Earth but speed up on one side, an idea that held sway until Kepler reimagined elliptical orbits. That equant mechanism gave medieval astrologers predictive power and priests way more accuracy than star-smeared fish oil smudges ever could. You murmur, "Equint." More like a quantum leap, and the scribe tuts, shaking his ink-smudged head. It's your third joke, hitting the required mark. You blink at the ink blot dripping from the quillry, minding you of lunar eclipses, comets, the geometry hall, the hidden archives. Each moment folds into the next in a tapestry of rediscovery. A candle guttering by a stained glass window casts colored shards on a pile of bound folios. You edge closer to examine the cover of a newly minted edition of Plato's Timaeus, translated by Marsilio Ficino. For centuries, this dialogue was locked in Greek oblivion, but manuscript hunters in Constantinople carried breeches of parchment westward after 1453. See, you could almost taste the salt of the Bosphorus in the air. A mainstream detail. Ficino published his translation in 1484 CE, igniting Neoplatonism's flame across Italian courts. Historians still argue whether Plato's cosmology truly inspired Galileo's Leaning Tower experiments or simply furnished elegant metaphors for courtly salons. You hold the slim volume, feeling its linen binding and the crisp resistance of fresh pages. A fringe scholar once insisted that Ficino's epistle concealed a secret code, demonstrating planetary magnetism that would have made for better Wi-Fi towers. You smirk at the thought. You close the door behind you and step into a sunlit loggia, where scholars are debating in a melange of Latin, Greek, and the occasional Arabic phrase. A clatter of quills echoes across benches as each voice vies for prestige. You lean against a carved balustrade and gaze down at the city. You can almost smell the bakery ovens and hear distant lute strings. Do you feel tethered to that same urge? You saw in ziggurat priests and megalith builders an unquenchable thirst to decode the sky's secrets. With one last breath of parchment-scented air, you pocket the scraps of Latin text you've copied pilgrimages into cosmic lore carried on pen and paper rather than scroll and tablet. Whether these borrowed manuscripts truly rebooted Western science or merely polished ancient myth, what's undeniable is that priestly wisdom once whispered in hidden crypts. It's now flared across print shops and universities alike. You step away, quill-tipped fingers smudged with ink, ready to chart tomorrow's dawn. You slip through an unassuming side door into a vaulted parlor where candlelight pools on patterned rug and shadows dance across. Velvet banners embroidered with stars and spirals. The air is sweet with beeswax, aged leather, and a faint undercurrent of lavender, a calming scent the initiates use to steady their nerves before confession. You're in the headquarters of the Aurum Arcanum, clandestine lodge that claims unbroken descent from prehistoric star priests of Sumer and megalith builders of Western Europe. From the moment you cross the threshold, you feel the weight of centuries pressing against your shoulders, like a cloak too heavy for your spine. Along one wall, a long oak table holds parchment scrolls bound with brass clasps. Their edges are scorched as though they pass through a kill, perhaps a fringe tale about secret manuscripts hidden in Roman catacombs to escape early church censors. You kneel and unroll one to reveal a genealogical chart tracing each Grand Master back to a figure named Sumo, purportedly the head priest of your around 2100 BCEU. Taste the mustiness of time-worn vellum in your mouth and run your finger along curling ink, lines that link kings and lodge elders like stars in a constellation. At the table's head stands an elder in a hibiscus red robe, his face half hidden beneath a deep hood. He raises a silver staff tipped with a miniature astrolabe and intones the lodge's motto, "From stone to star, the line unbroken." It resonates like a chord struck on a crystal bell. You lean forward, feeling the resonance in your chest, and recall that modern Freemasonry formally organized in London's Grand Lodge in 1717. Its mainstream start date, many lodges claim operative origins in medieval stonemasons' guilds and older mythical builders of Solomon's Temple. Historians still argue whether those operative guilds directly link to earlier cosmic cults or if lineage charts were creative marketing for aspiring aristocrats. You rise and step toward a low brazier where powdered lapis lazuli and gold leaf swirl in simmering oil. The fragrance rises, cool mineral meets warm metal, drawing you closer. An initiate hands you a small silver mirror embossed with a 7-pointed star, the lodge's emblem of celestial wisdom. You hold it at eye level and see your reflection overlaid with ghostly glyphs that seem to shift like distant nebulae. A quirky rumor in the fringe community insists that early Rosicrucian manifestos, published around 1614, contained instructions for inscribing such mirrors with hidden inks only visible under moonlight. You test the mirror under a nearby shuttered window, nothing appears, and you quip. Guess I need better Wi-Fi for cosmic updates. Beyond the brazier, a circular chamber opens like a secretive womb. Its stone floor is scored with concentric rings engraved in high relief. The outermost marked with zodiacal symbols. The next ring inscribed with names of star priests from your dynasty, and the innermost reserved for the current cohort of initiates. You step into the pattern, feeling each groove underfoot. And remember those labyrinth designs at Chartres Cathedral? Another echo of medieval builders borrowing priestly geometry for sacred floors. Historians still argue whether cathedral labyrinths encoded astral knowledge or simply offered pilgrims a symbolic path to salvation. A hush falls as the elder priest strides forward. Raising his staff, he grips a leather-bound volume bound in goatskin, an alleged fragment of a lost hermetic codex, and reads an invocation. O hidden star, reveal thy pulse within our blood. His deep voice reverberates off the domed ceiling, and you feel your pulse respond in kind. Around you, robed figures draw long strokes on chalked tablets, sketching star maps that align with solstice points visible at Avebury and New Grange millennia ago. You think modern astronomy software loops these maps in milliseconds, but here each stroke is a deliberate penance. A ritual act connecting you personally to cosmic order. The ritual continues with the exchange of lineage oaths. A junior initiate clutches a silver dagger, its blade engraved with spiral motifs akin to those on Bronze Age incense burners. He swears to uphold the lodge's secrets, vowing fealty to ancestors whose names echo like ghosts. Diodamu, the Starseer. Ankeny Biru and Belemnuth of Cahokia. You raise your right hand, feeling a thrill as fresh as the first time you tasted emery on a lens. A soft joke forms on your lips. I wonder if my family tree has this many branches. The room stills at your wit, but you detect a hint of a smile beneath the elder's hood. Next, you witness the signing of the Codex of Continuity. Each member dips a quill into a bowl of indigo ink laced with ground meteorite. You lean close and inhale metallic tang. Imperial Rome to cosmic rendezvous in one whiff. Your turn arrives, you sign your new name, Stella Custas, on a parchment scroll, and feel a tremor beneath the floor plates as though the stones themselves acknowledge your entry. Fringe enthusiasts allege that Rosicrucian brotherhoods once plotted to revive lost Egyptian rites, even mapping secret passages under the pyramids to channel celestial power. You can't help imagining subterranean, torchlit corridors and whispering walls. The elder recloses the goatskin volume and guides you into a smaller sanctum, illuminated by a single oculus overhead. Inside, a miniature ziggurat model stands on a raised plinth, each tier inscribed with cosmological texts in Etruscan, Sanskrit, and Latin. You step forward, laying your palm atop the third tier, and a thin haze of sandalwood incense drifts around your ankles. You taste dusty sandalwood on your tongue, then recall the alchemical oils and stardust from that far-off chamber. Some rituals never fade. They merely adapt. He instructs you to trace the ziggurat steps with a fingertip, chanting names of astral deities as you ascend and descend. You close your eyes, letting soft syllables roll off your tongue. Nana, Marduk, Ra, Nut, Anu. Each name feels like a current in the room, stirring ancient energies. You think? My smartphone's Siri can't conjure this depth of feeling. And you suppress a grin, another joke saved for moments of levity, as the ceremony winds down. The robed figures assemble around a dense oak door carved with the lodge's secret cipher. The elder unlocks it with a silver key shaped like a comet. And beyond lies the vault of Ecos, a repository of illuminated manuscripts, astrolabes, and relics. You glimpse a small bronze mirror, etched with runes that glowed under moonlight. A star-glass lens that once belonged to a medieval astrologer. And a leather-bound diary with wax seals from the 16th century. You catch the familiar itch of discovery. Centuries-old opulence mingled with enough fringe lore to keep conspiracy bloggers busy for decades. You step back into the parlor's soft lamplight, scrolls and mirrors now flickering in reflection, as though greeting you by name. The elder lowers his hood, revealing sharp eyes that glint like distant stars. "Welcome," he says, voice soft but unyielding, to a lineage longer than any dynasty. You nod, heart still humming with candlelit resonance. At last, you slip into the corridor. The ritual's scent, lavender, beeswax, meteorite, clinging to your robes. Behind you, the lodge's door seals with a gentle click, the echoes of oaths. An invocation locked inside for the next generation. As you move away, you realize that throughout history, secret societies have woven themselves into shadows, asserting direct descent from star priests to grant their rituals cosmic legitimacy. Whether these lineages hold genuine threads of prehistoric wisdom or are artful mythologies designed to enchant and empower. Historians still argue whether such esoteric orders preserved ancient knowledge or simply repackaged myth for curious initiates. You pause under a flickering lantern. Press your palm to your chest and feel a resonance that wasn't there an hour ago. You smile, remembering the first time you counted sunbeams at a ziggurat's dawn and the last time you watched smoke spiral in an incense chamber. Secret orders claim those moments as part of their tapestry, binding you to ancestors who charted the skies by torchlight and bestowed their cosmic torch upon you. You step into the night. The stars overhead, silent witnesses to promises whispered in candlelit rooms, and carry with you the thrill of belonging to a lineage older than any crown. You step out from the Aurum Arcanum's candlelit corridors into a bustling modern world that still hums with echoes of those ancient rites. The night air here carries a different resonance, electric hum from city lights, distant car engines, droning like ritual drums, and the faint whir of observatory domes rotating under the stars. You feel a thrill as your shoes click along pavement etched with stardust-inspired mosaics commemorating the Apollo missions. Monuments celebrating humanity's leap from myth to moon boots. In front of you, a sleek glass tower houses the Global Sky Institute, where scientists in lab coats calibrate radio telescopes with precision that descends from those ziggurat-side calculations. An inheritance you can practically taste as you press your palm against the cold steel railing. Mainstream fact: modern observatories routinely reference Babylonian lunar tables when modeling tidal effects on Earth's rotation. You lean in, inhaling crisp air scented faintly of ozone and fresh coffee, and marvel at how nothing really vanishes. Ancient recordings shape today's ephemerides. Inside, you join a guided tour, slipping on virtual reality goggles that project 3D star maps overhead. Constellations pulse in neon hues, and you feel the slight weight of a haptic vest simulating the hush and vibration of temple stones underfoot. A guide explains how sexagesimal divisions 360 degrees in a circle, 60 minutes per degree, remain the backbone of celestial navigation. You chuckle at the idea of ancient priests high-fiving over wedge marks. Then quip to your neighbor, bet they'd love autopilot today, no sheep to herd at 3 a.m. It earns a soft laugh, one of your 3 jokes for the section. You wander into a quiet alcove where a touchscreen cycles through images of Sumerian star calendars, Renaissance hermetic diagrams, and coded ceremonies from the Aurum vault. Each slide fades into the next like an ASMR whisper, and you shiver at the tactile glow. Fringe tidbit. Some New Age practitioners still inscribe personal horoscopes on clay tablets before converting them to blockchain for cosmic authenticity. You grin at the absurdity. Blockchain Babylonians. Anyone? A gentle murmur flows through the Institute's planetarium dome as the lights dim and a hushed narrator intones the origin stories of chemical elements forged in supernova. You're enveloped by a star field projected onto the curved ceiling, an echo of painted domes in medieval chambers, but now rendered by laser vectors. You press your fingertips to the plush recliner, feeling vibrations timed to the pulsar signals embedded in the soundtrack. A soft flicker of LED constellations above twinkles in sync. You slip away from the crowd into a small side room labeled Cosmic Rituals. There, practitioners draped in ceremonial robes, some borrowed from Wiccan traditions, others synthesized in Thailand, gather around a modern quartz and copper crystal grid on the floor. Soft chimes tinkle as they trace zodiac glyphs with essential oils distilled from frankincense and lab-grown stardust. Historians still argue whether these practices preserve genuine priestly science or simply repackage myth into Instagram filters. You linger to watch a facilitator light a scented candle at the grid's center. The flame flickers in slow motion under a high-speed camera used for both aesthetic projection and air quality monitoring. You wrinkle your nose. Nothing like a little aerosolized ritual to keep the EPA busy. You tease, realizing that's your second joke. A ripple of laughter smooths the strategy into the group's communal breath, leaving the rituals behind. You ascend a spiral staircase in the Institute's lobby whose design riffs on those Archimedean stairs. Modern engineers honed curves using parametric algorithms descended from ancient masons. You feel playful pride in the continuity. Geometry that once aligned temples now guides the flow of people in glass atriums. At the top, you spy a gallery of cosmic artifacts, a reconstructed Nimrod lens, a clay calendar wheel, and a lead-bound manuscript reputed to be a facsimile of the Book of Thoth. Visitors snap selfies with the lens on loan from a museum, then move on to try augmented reality filters that project starry halos atop their heads. You smirk at the irony. Centuries-old lenses now. Instagram spectacles. The final exhibit features a video loop of astrophysicists referencing ancient texts to name planetary features like how the International Astronomical Union borrowed Sumerian deity names for exoplanets. You watch researchers barefoot on a lab floor, consulting your star charts and 21st century spreadsheets side by side. Their measured voices debate patterns in cosmic microwave background radiation. Just as priests once debated river floods and lunar omens, you exit through a glass door onto a rooftop. Terrace bathed in soft violet uplighting. The city sprawls. Below and overhead, the inky sky drips with stars you half recognize from century-old temple carvings. A mild breeze carries distant conversations, drone propellers, and a whiff of lilac from rooftop gardens. Sensory melange as layered as any incense mix you've encountered. You lean against a steel balustrade that echoes the geometry of temple rails from millennia past. In your palm, your smartphone buzzes. A push notification invites you to a live stream about quantum gravity theories that cite Babylonian planetary models. You smirk, delivering your third joke. Babylonians called. They want their formulas back. The group murmurs appreciation and you pocket your device. Standing there, you realize the journey has come full circle. From fish whale-smeared priests counting gazes toward the horizon to data scientists parsing terabytes of telescope readings. Both sought patterns in the cosmos, bridging earth and sky with tools of geometry, optics, and ritual. Whether you wear robes or lab coats, chart with clay tablets, or code, the impulse remains the same to whisper secrets of the universe into human hands. Asterisk. Now, rest your mind for a moment and feel the gentle rhythm of your breath, in and out, as soft as the sigh of distant stars. Allow the city's hum to fade, replaced by a calm current that carries you back through time, threading together ziggurat dawns, megalithic solstices, alchemical incense, and secret lodges. Every echo of ancient priests, whether etched in stone, ink, or memory, has joined with modern quests, telescopes that pierce nebulae, VR domes that cradle cosmic panoramas, crystal grids that blend myth and mindfulness. These ways of seeing and believing form a single tapestry, weaving your curiosity into the fabric of the universe. Feel your shoulders loosen, each knot of wonder untangling into soft patience. The boundary between science and spirituality dissolves here, leaving a spacious twilight where all lives without demand. You are both witness and storyteller, a keeper of patterns older than cities, yet always new when you trace them anew. In that vast quiet, the sky breathes with you. Planets drift in slow circles, and the secret pulse of time thrum in your veins float on this hush a little longer, letting your thoughts settle like fine dust in a sunbeam. No questions need immediate answers. Marl's observations can wait. Tonight, simply be content to drift, tethered by memory, buoyed by stars, embraced by the continuum of seekers who quietly dared to read the heavens. Sleep well, knowing that whether you dream of tablets and altars or satellites and superconductors, you're part of a lineage that never stopped gazing upward. Let that steady gaze lull you deeper until your thoughts settle into the soft, velvety dark where cosmic mysteries dance like embers. End of script. Sweet dreams.